The Federal Reserve needs to be hit with the intellectual version of a B-2 or a DOGE-like intervention. Hello, I'm Steve Forbes, and this is What's Ahead, where you get the insights you need to better navigate these turbulent times. Our central bank is behaving badly. It won't reduce interest rates, in no small part because it's angry at Donald Trump's loud calls to cut rates and his consistent carping at Fed boss Jerome Powell. The proof of the Federal Reserve's animus toward President Trump is our central bank twice cutting interest rates before the presidential election, when that would have presumably helped the Democrats, and resisting doing this since Trump began his second term, even though inflation is lower than it was last year. This is deeply disturbing. Hurt the economy because you loathe the commander-in-chief. Letting personal snits about the president's verbal broadsides guide monetary policy is shocking enough. But a deeper problem within the Federal Reserve is the rock-like belief that it must manipulate economic activity to control inflation. For decades, the Fed has looked askance when the economy gets up a real head of steam. Prosperity means more demand for products and services, and that can trigger higher prices and higher wages. And to the Fed's economists, there's some 400 armed with PhDs in the bank's Washington headquarters alone, and probably several hundred more in the Fed's 12 regional banks. That means inflation. In their minds, since good times produce higher prices, the economy must be curbed, even if it means inducing a recession. The economy is overheating is their cry. Ask yourself, if your real income rises, do you start overheating and sweating? The stupidity here is profound. A free economy operates on prices. If things become too expensive, buyers will cut back. Producers will produce less or find ways to make their goods or services less expensive or make them better. Compare your handheld today, which is a virtual supercomputer, with the original cell phone more than 40 years ago, which was the size of a shoebox, cost almost $4,000, weighed like a brick, and had barely an hour of battery life. Or compare the typical house today with what was common a few decades ago. Free markets are not perfect because people are not perfect, but left alone, that is, not overly harmed by taxes, regulations, and meddling from the Federal Reserve, markets will adjust and move forward if there are excesses or shortages. Jerome Powell snarled a lot last week about tariffs and their potential to raise prices. So let's get this right. Tariffs, which are indeed a form of a sales tax, may well raise prices, and the Fed is saying that, therefore, it must respond by depressing the economy, by means of keeping short-term interest rates artificially high. The word weird doesn't begin to describe this logic. Let's deliberately hurt the economy because tariffs may raise prices. This gets to how wrong-headed the Fed is on the subject of inflation. It doesn't distinguish between price changes resulting from government actions like tariffs and pandemic lockdowns, or natural disasters like droughts or earthquakes, and changes from reducing the value of the dollar. The Federal Reserve must understand the basic difference between monetary inflation, i.e. the integrity of the greenback, and non-monetary inflation, like sales taxes. If it wants to mouth off on tariffs and other issues, well, it's a free country. But keeping the dollar stable in value is what our central bank should be focused on. Period. So what's to be done? The Fed isn't going to change on its own. That's why the next Fed head must be prepared to engage in a DOGE-like sweep in personnel to overhaul this insular, wrong-thinking institution. In preparation, administration officials like Treasury Chief Scott Bessent should be making the case why the Fed's current assumptions and operating models are so egregiously erroneous. I'm Steve Forbes. Thanks for listening. Do send in your comments and suggestions, and I look forward to being with you soon again.